We do say this on a website, but let me share my screen. Let me see if I can get this to work. And this is a video.
Oh, cool.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you able to hear that as well?
No.
No.
Oh, no volume. Okay, well, that was we had a tech session Wednesday morning.
Oh, sorry.
Those carburetors that look beautiful were from Mr. Abbott. So thank you, Bob, for the restoration of those. And so that's Frank Jake's Sprite, and we were able to get the motor hadn't run in 24 years, and so I know that Mike Hirsch was there, and Dave Malley was there, and Dan Warner. Dan Warner came down 4 hours from Vermont. So Dan, thank you very much for doing that. We appreciate that. Ted Stanton was there also, but so we were able to get the car started, and it sounds good. Needs a little more tweaking before we actually get going with it, but I know Frank was very pleased and excited about that, and it was good. And I'm not quite sure why you couldn't hear it. It was audio came through on mine. I gotta need to figure out something with Zoom about doing that. But so Bob, again, thank you for the restoration of those carburetors.
It sounded great.
Yes, it did. Yeah, Ted was there, and Mike and Dave, and yeah, we had done, and Dan. We had I think there were 15 of us that were there, and we were also able to get Ted had a 100 motor that hadn't turned over in 40 years, or had never turned over since he owned it, and he'd had it for 40 years, and we were able to get that motor turned over as well. So we had a successful tech session last
What did
Wednesday.
you guys do to get that motor to turn over, Pete?
Well, Bruce was the one really got it done, and was able to with a crowbar, and using the he and Ted took the God, I'm losing my train of thought here. I apologize. That in terms of
Took the pulley off.
yeah, the back pulley, and then you got those 4 bolts there that held that, and was able to get it loose. And then Ted had been putting down Marvel's mystery oil down it periodically, and so it was loose. And then we ended up pulling the head, and we're able to get it to turn freely. And the 4 piston walls look really good.
Cool.
So needs a little more cleanup, but it's we think we didn't know if we'd had a boat anchor or if we had something that was restorable, and we definitely think the motor's restorable.
Peter, will that motor go over to Europe?
Well, that's the tentative plan right now. That BT7 behind me is Bill and Jack Rawls' race car, and FSL 246, and that's coming here this year to go vintage racing, and definitely the plan to go out to Elkhart Lake for Conclave in September, and possibly go to Lime Rock over Labor Day weekend. So if that's the case, and when it gets shipped back to the UK, we could put the motor in the container and ship it back over there. So
yeah, those folks at Rawls are very pleasant. They've got quite the shop there.
They certainly do.
I had a very welcomed morning with them a while ago.
Yep, and I mentioned that to Jack in an email, and he said, "Yo, I remember Mike." So that's good. So Dave, let's start with you, because you were the first one in with your question. So Dave has a Bugeye Sprite, and he has no brakes. So Dave, you want to give us a little more update, because I know you've been doing a little bit of analytical work today, and maybe give the update to our experts and see if we have some recommendations for you.
Thank you, one and all. Appreciate this. Took the car down the hill to put into my trailer for the winter. Very small hill, and applied the brake. Had no brakes whatsoever. The brakes were really not that good to begin with. I honestly don't know what the problem was. Put the car away, recently took it out again. Got up underneath, saw no visible signs of brake fluid around any of the wheels. The reservoir was dry. I filled it, pumped the brakes a few times, got a little bit of a pedal. Let it sit for a bit, got underneath to see if I could find any brake fluid anywhere. None to be seen. Waited a little longer, pumped it some more, and the pedal was there. It just wasn't good. I'm not certain what the issue is, to be honest. It must obviously now the brakes would need to be bled if I haven't a leak. But why would I lose all the brake fluid unless there wasn't there had to have been a leak someplace, but I can find no sign of a leak anywhere.
Refresh my memory, Dave. Is your car drums all around, or do you have front discs?
Front discs.
Okay. Okay, great. And then,
Now-
so is the reservoir empty again after what you played with today?
Peter, no, it is not.
Okay, so you've kept a full reservoir. Now, do you have any idea how long since you had checked the reservoir? Months or?
Yeah, probably a couple of months.
Okay,
Although every time I change the oil, I check the reservoir, and actually a little more frequently. But if there were signs of fluid, I would have gotten into it more at that point. But as I say, going down the hill, no brakes whatsoever.
but now that you've put brake fluid in there, you do have a pedal now, albeit not as good as you want. Is that?
That is correct. And at that point, I hadn't driven the car. We got too much snow and ice and everything around here, so I don't know the issue.
Okay.
Where else might it leak if it weren't at the four connections to the brakes?
The
And
master
it's
cylinder.
it's a Bugeye, right? So it's
Correct. Yep.
it's a universal master cylinder for the brake and the clutch.
That is correct.
So it could have leaked from the clutch, the slave cylinder.
There's not a,
It's the
Steve,
same,
there's not,
it's the same, it's
Steve, there's not a separate clutch master?
No,
not on the old Bugeyes, it was one reservoir.
for
The
both.
reservoir,
I
the
believe.
reservoir
That's
can be
right.
common, but the master cylinders are also common?
I
I'm
don't think there's-
confused.
Have you looked at the floor inside the car underneath the where the master cylinder is?
I did. At one point earlier in the summer, there was a little bit of oil, i.e., maybe brake fluid, that dripped onto my shoe. But
Yeah, that sounds like you're
no,
leaking
no
master
puddle.
cylinder.
Yeah,
I
Dave,
did- That was
I've had the
excuse me,
master,
but that was the first place I checked.
I've had the
Realizing that
master,
at the point I
I've had the master cylinder leak between the carpets and the inside the car. You never see it, and that sounds to me like what you've got is a master cylinder leak.
Interesting. Would that I have rubber mats on the floor. Would you not assume that it would show up on the top of the mat?
You would think it would be, but it kind of disappears down in there. It doesn't take a lot to empty the.
So what's your suggestion? That pull everything off the floor and see whether it's wet with oil?
Yeah, at a close look at the input, the pedal side of the master cylinder usually is a giveaway, especially if you take the little rubber grommet thing off. You can usually see if that's leaking.
Where are you speaking?
Under the foot pedal. Again, I'm not familiar with the Bugeye, but I'm assuming the master cylinder works like the big Heelys, that there's a plunger in the inside the car. There's a rubber cap over the plunger on the master cylinder. If you take that off and it looks awfully sloppy in there, it's probably where it's leaking from.
How much does the master cylinder hold? Does anyone know?
Not much, but it's pumping out fluid all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So-
it doesn't hold, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 ounces. It's not a lot.
Okay, so that's a very good starting point. I'll go there first thing tomorrow.
It
Thank
might
you.
also be leaking. It might not drip directly onto the mat, but sometimes it drips down the firewall and seeps its way down behind the mats.
That's
So-
what,
Behind the
that's what,
rug.
that's
Behind
what
the
I was
rug as
talking
well.
about, Rick. That's what was happening in my car, Rick. It was kind of disappearing into no man's land between the insulation and the actual metal.
What would the fix be? Replacing the master, or can you rebuild that?
We can rebuild
Probably
them.
replacing the masters at best. Either that, you can get them re-sleeved, but if you can get now if you've got just brakes on the front, you've got a later master cylinder on there too.
True.
So to
So
replace.
you probably New Old Stock Locators in Rhode Island sells a increased height master cylinder for the sprites and the Bugeye. You're supposed to, when you change over to disc brakes, because it takes a little bit more fluid because of the calipers, you're supposed to change over the master cylinder so it is a little bit, the container is a little bit higher than the stock Bugeye one. So that might be a good way to go. I've seen them on eBay. I've seen them at New Old Stock Locators, I think the name of it is on eBay, and they talk about it being for disc brake Bugeyes.
Okay, as opposed to buying a new one that would be designed specifically for the addition of the disc brakes. You're telling me that it sounds like I could buy something used or new old stock online?
Well, what that business New Old Stock is, they have also reproduction stuff. They're in Providence or Pawtucket, but they advertise on eBay all the time, or they sell on eBay all the time.
One more time for the name of the company?
New Old Stock, NOS.
It's called NOS Locators, I think it is. If you try to buy an older one or something, you're gonna have the same issue about being concerned about whether the bores are pitted and they need new seals, all that other stuff.
Right.
So these are basically new reproductions. And we put one in one of our friends' cars a couple of years ago. They work really good.
Terrific. Well, let's hope that's my issue. As I say, I see no leaking anywhere else. And that would be a logical place, I guess, to.
Yeah,
Rick,
because
if you're-
Dave, obviously you recall the guy you bought the car from, he restored a lot of cars, but he really wasn't a Healey specialist.
That's very good, Peter. Yep, you're right.
So it's conceivable that even though he's got the disc brakes in there, he didn't change and put the proper master cylinder in there.
And that may account for not really great braking to begin with.
Yeah, because with disc brakes, it should be better. Again, it's all down to bleeding too.
Okay.
Make sure you get a good pedal. If you got air in the line, you're not going to get a good pedal.
Well,
But
that's
if you still have a drum brake master cylinder with disc brake conversion, that may be part of the problem.
excellent.
So you
What
said,
may
Yeah.
work as part of that, as I said, because you're using more fluid to put on the disc brake calipers, you've got more capacity in the disc brake calipers. And so if you have the original Bugeye standard brake on there and that master cylinder, the capacity in the master cylinder is going to be less fluid than it would be in the one that's actually designed for a disc brake car.
Good.
So it's
That makes
possible you're losing fluid down into the brake lines, et cetera.
sense. Okay.
And is it possible that if each stroke if your reservoir is a little bit low and you're using more fluid to run the disc brakes, is it possible that the reservoir may become unported and a little bit of air got in? And
Possible.
okay. All right, because that would indicate you have to be much more careful about making sure the reservoir is topped off, possibly.
But
Peter,
a question,
Steve.
if Dave puts this new brake master cylinder in, then he would have to do a clutch master cylinder as well. Because the original Bugeye had both clutch and brake fed by one reservoir, correct?
Yes, it's
So
a
does-
slave
so does
cylinder
this
on the,
replacement. The replacement was actually made for the Mark II sprites that had disc brakes. And
No, I
so-
understand that, Rick,
Yep.
but what I just want Dave to understand, and I'm a little confused. Is it still a joint reservoir or is it a separate
No, it's joint.
master for the clutch and a separate master for the brake?
No, it's a
Just
joint
one.
one on the Mark IIs.
And,
I
and
think,
is it,
I think you're confusing the terminology here. Steve is asking about a common reservoir, not, but there's always two master cylinders, correct?
No,
Yes.
no. It's
Wait,
one
wait, there's a
master, it's
master
one
for the
master
clutch
cylinder.
and
On
a
the
master for the
Bugeye
brake.
and the Mark II sprites is one master cylinder that feeds both the clutch and the brakes.
That's the
Right.
reservoir.
Can I
not
chime? Yeah, can I chime in here?
please.
You're talking about terminology, and there is a problem here. We're talking about a common reservoir with
Exactly.
feeding two master cylinders.
Right.
Master cylinders for the disc brake cars were 3/4 inch diameter. Master cylinders for the drum brake cars were 7/8 inch diameter. Now, with a 7/8 inch diameter master cylinder, you get less pressure but higher volume. But for the disc brake cars, you need more pressure and less volume. So the 3/4 master cylinder designed for the disc brake cars actually displaces less fluid, but provides a higher clamping pressure on the calipers. Do you follow that?
I
That,
do. I guess I was trying to help Dave understand. If he found this new old stock for disc brakes, is it a reservoir and a master brake? Does he also have to do something for his clutch? Is it,
It's a one-piece unit which has two master cylinders bores in it.
okay, so he does not. He could buy this new old stock
Yep.
and hook it up and his clutch will work. He
But
doesn't need
both-
two.
but-
Very good.
But both the bores will be 3/4 inch.
Fine. Okay.
I have experienced difficulty with later sprites when you put a 3/4 inch, and early sprites when you put a 3/4 inch master cylinder in, it's sometimes hard to get enough movement on the clutch to make the clutch fully disengage. So you've got to be careful with that.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, while I've got you on here, I've been trying to sign on to your website a couple of times, and I keep on getting warnings that it's got some kind of malware in it. You might want to check it
Yeah,
out.
we're having a terrible time with that malware. We've been working to get rid of it, and we may have to get a whole new website address. We can't.
no.
Just keep trying, and eventually it'll go through. But I apologize for that.
That's unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Hopefully it's not some ransomware as well.
It's not ransomware, it's a malware thing. It doesn't actually do any harm, apparently. It's just annoying.
Yeah, wow.
can I interrupt and ask again, should it be then the 3/4 inch size that I should be looking at purchasing?
If you're using disc brakes, you should be using a 3/4 master cylinder.
Very good.
So Dave, the other points, Moss and Bugeye Guy are places to look as well.
I was going to go there and compare pricing, no question. Yep.
Yep. So
Would that be, gentlemen, the pros in the room, would that be the way you would go as opposed to try to buy something used?
Yes,
Did I hear a yes? Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Buying used, you're just gonna get something that's 60 years old and probably pitted and not work for you anyhow.
and
Yeah.
the reason it's used is that somebody else was dissatisfied and bought a new one, so you're buying their troubles.
well,
But the new old stock company that some of you spoke about, do they in fact sell new old stock, or is just the name of the company?
it's the name of the company.
All right. Well, so I have to find oil on the lower side of the master cylinders.
A quick question. I'm new to the Heelys. I have a BJ8. The reservoir, it's like a size of a small oil can, like about that big. but you take off the top, and there's what looks like a standpipe in there. And from my understanding, there's a common reservoir for the clutch and the brakes. What's the purpose of that sort of? It looks like a standpipe. That may not be what it is, but I'm just wondering.
It's just two chambers in the same can, one for the clutch, one for the brakes.
And when you're topping it off, you want the fluid to be above both, so that
Right.
one doesn't feed to the other. It's just sort of like a divided container, independent container. Okay, right.
The theory was that if your clutch leaked, that was the center, the tube inside the reservoir. If your clutch leaked, it didn't necessarily mean that you lost your brakes.
Ooh.
That's what it was all about.
Okay, and simpler than having two completely separate reservoirs.
Absolutely.
Because you're just filling one thing. And DOT 3, 4 fluid, or does it really make a difference?
Three and four are the same thing. 4 is just a higher temperature tolerance.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Is it, never having done this, is it a difficult swap? Disconnecting, removing, and putting a new one in?
Oh yeah, you'll have it done in about 5 or 6 hours.
So Dave, there are worse jobs, but it'll take an hour or so.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to bleed it,
Yeah, you got to bleed your system then. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
and
that's
then
what
you have to wear your hard hat so you don't hit the top bonnet of the Bugeye and cut your head. It'll be a fun job.
all right.
Yeah, just invite us over. We'll sit there and laugh.
I may solicit some help.
Others may disagree, but it's actually easier to take the whole housing out.
Right.
Take-
Oh, yeah, I
Take
would
out the
assume.
whole housing and you can get the thing apart a lot easier.
I would have one suggestion, and I learned this, I think, from Tom Mulligan. I have a big Healy, so I'd always mount the master and then try to get the two little pipes to screw in. I realized that was totally wrong. So Dave, when you have your master, don't totally mount it to the firewall. Put the two fluid pipes two fluid pipes.
Yep.
I think there would be two, right? Yeah,
Yep.
two fluid
on the
pipes.
top of the master.
Put them in, screw them in first, very carefully, because you could wiggle the master around a little bit so that they thread in. And remember, you're threading a steel piece that's on the pipe into an aluminum casing for the reservoir. Really easy to cross thread it and totally screw it up. So if you have the reservoir loose and screw the pipes in first and then mount it to the firewall, it seems to be much better. And thank you, Tom, for that. He told me that years ago, and he was absolutely right.
Are you talking about the reservoir or the
master? I apologize, the master.
Yeah, because the reservoir is sort of forward on the edge and on the port side. Yeah.
But that's on a BJ8. It's not the case on a Sprite.
I was talking putting the pipes on the master cylinder, or in Dave's part, his master has the reservoir built in. So just don't attach it to the firewall until the pipes are attached. It's the only thing I wanted to bring up.
Perfect.
So
Peter,
lots of good advice for Dave. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to add for Dave?
I was just going to concur in what that gentleman just said. I didn't get his name, but definitely do not mount that thing before you put the tubes in, because they can be a bear putting in with the thing mounted. So I definitely concur in what he's saying.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. So, Mike O'Neill, I saw you were on earlier. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Peter. My name is Mike O'Neill. I'm a new member. Just want to say thank you for letting me join your group. I feel like I'm completely out of my league with the amount of experience you guys have with the Healy, but I've had a BJ7, a 63 BJ7 for about 18 years. And she's been a great car, very mechanically sound, very reliable. And up until recently, just started to notice the dog legs were looking a little bubbly, and the rocker panels were looking a little, bubbly as well. So started to get into replacing the fender panels and the rocker panels, and decided to do a respray on it. And I was Bob Britton was kind enough to give me some information trying to match up the Colorado Red, which is no longer available. And so as I'm considering doing the job, I've come up against a big decision, which is my windscreen is scratched from when it was previously resprayed before me. So it's like one of those things that, if the car is beautiful and all I can notice is that one blemish, and it's obviously on the windshield. So I'm faced with the dilemma of, do I replace the windscreen or live with it? And I've tried to hide it with a sticker or something, but I just can't find something that makes sense. But wanted to talk to you guys who have more experience dealing with the windscreen, because I understand that it's a real bear to remove, and wanted to get your advice on that and see what you would say about that.
So you're talking about replacing the glass, not the whole windscreen, right, Mike?
Well, the glass, yes, just replacing the glass with some Pinkleton. With the Pinkleton
I think
glass.
under Massachusetts insurance, if the windscreen is broken or whatever, it has to be repaired or replaced at no cost to you. So there you go.
Well, that is on your daily driver. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case on our classic cars.
I do have it. I do have it registered as a daily driver. So it's not.
You're all set.
What's that?
You're all set.
I hope so. But in the event that I'm not,
You just need a
give me
brick.
some advice on who I should go to. Who I should go to, how reliable they are. Because I remember being on a meeting in the past, and someone had also replaced the windscreen. I think it might have been, Bob Abbott, you had given somebody some advice that they had replaced it and the windshield had cracked after the replacement. I didn't know if that was an issue with the newer glass being thinner, or with the skill set not being there to put them back in. Is it worthwhile to do it? Obviously I would like to do it aesthetically, because it is something that bugs me, but just wanted to find out from you guys to see what your experience has been with that.
Where is the blemish?
The blemish is on the passenger side, about 20% down from the top. So it's really right in the sight line side. It's something I can see. I wish it was a little lower and I could stick a Healey sticker on it or something, but
just make all your turns to the left.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the turn or anything.
It's just where you look.
I'm gonna have the thing cleaned up, and it's the first time in 18 years that I've done any body work on it. And now that I'm doing that, I really wanted to bring it up to the highest level that I could without spending a fortune on it.
Is the windshield on a BJ7 the same as the BJ8?
Yes.
Same frame assembly and everything?
Yes.
It is. It's the same.
Yeah, I changed the glass on my BJ8 a few years back, because they came out with Moss and other manufacturers came out with better glass. They came out with more a thicker glass which fit the frame better. I forget the name of the name that's on it, but you look it up on any supplier. That whole frame comes off. Yes,
It's called Pinkleton.
Yes,
Pilkington. I used to work for them.
Yes, that's it. And that was the problem with the old glass before that. It was very thin. It didn't fit the gaskets very well. This Pilkington glass was pretty good. I changed it for what it's worth. I changed it on my BJ8 myself not too long ago, and that whole frame comes apart. So it's not like you're like in a modern car where you have to fit that windshield into a fixed four-sided frame. He takes the whole thing apart, and the new gaskets, and it all goes back together pretty easily. You just take the whole windshield out. The screws are in the door jambs, and just take the whole thing out and work on it on the bench. It's not
Well,
that big of a deal, I don't
I
think.
have the windshield completely removed from the car, so it's off the car.
Mhm.
So
Now, if those internal,
I'll be honest with you, I'd be better. I'd be afraid I'd ruin something or do something incorrectly. I
well,
was
that's
gonna find
always
out,
a possibility with a Healy, but that's.
I was gonna find out if there was anyone in the Eastern Massachusetts area that you would recommend I could send it to have it done. I definitely don't want to do it myself.
Okay.
So
Mike,
Carl J,
there's, you could look at like convertible top or upholstery places, call around, they might see that I took my Bugeye windshield to a convertible top place and they wrestled it in. That would be one option. Maybe some of the other members have another idea.
are you guys seeing my screen? This
Yes.
is
Yeah.
Yes.
on our this is on our website in terms of our suppliers. Now, these are two that have been recommended. And Carl J, I think you're on the call, right? Aren't you the one that
Yes.
recommended this Center Glass company in Raynham?
Yes, yeah, they just did my driver's door glass on my BJ7, and they had previously done a windshield on my MGB, which is a big job too, and they did a fine job. You know, they've been at it for many, many years, so they did a nice job.
And that was center glass or the center glass?
Center Glass in Raynham. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you.
And
I
so
appreciate
Mike,
that.
again, if you go onto our website, in the members only section, there where we have all the suppliers, that's in there and has all the details.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you steering
And
me
then
that
someone else
direction.
had mentioned this earlier, this Anawam glass and mirror in Attleboro, Mass as well.
Yep.
So those are two different ones that members on these calls have recommended.
So you think it's not that big of a deal? Just get the Pickleton glass and I'll be happier in the long run, I'm sure, than just putting that all back together and
Moss sells two different grades of glass. They sell the Pilkington / triplex, which is the better one. It's the thicker glass. It's a more original one. They also sell an economy one for a couple $100 less, and I think that's the one people have had trouble with them cracking.
Yes, I bought the thicker one. It also fits the frame much better than the thinner one.
The other thing that you might want to do is to go to what's the place up in David Knox place, British Car Specialist in Stockton, California, and order the screws that go into the brackets. I think there are 4 of them. There are brackets on it. They really get stuck in there, and a lot of times the only way to get them out is to drill them out or use a screw extractor. And they're of a unique size that you're not just going to get at the local hardware store. So you might want to get those in advance. And if you're going to bring it to a shop to get it replaced, bring those along and say, here you go.
Yeah, probably British standard, which is a bit of a pain. But
So they sell the brackets, the 4 corner brackets and the screws as a kit. You'll get the 16 screws and 4 corner brackets all, and buy those at the same time you buy the glass, wherever you're buying the glass from. Your car is old, those screws are rusted. You'll never get them apart and get them back together. So just buy new ones so that you can take them to the people, whoever you're going to have install the glass, because they won't get them apart either. Screws
They
have
sell
very,
those at
very
Moss.
small slots and they'll strip.
They sell that kit at Moss too, if you want to go that
Yes.
way, not just buy the
They
screws.
sell it at Moss. They sell it. Healy Surgeons has it. Stockton has it. Not Stockton.
I can only speak about 100, but I replaced this windscreen in my 100, and I broke the first one. I had to order it again because what I didn't do is mark the center of the glass and the center of the frame, because when you try, if it's off center and you try to bring those side pieces in, it breaks the glass. I found that out. So you got to mark the center of the glass, mark the center of the frame.
Great. And
So
and
Bob
Rick-
Abbott, just curious, what jerks in Massachusetts? So, Mike Hirsch was suggesting that. So, and I know our normal daily drivers replacement glass is free. Is it the same? Is it the same case with ours? So if you're insured with Haggerty or someone of that sort, is that a glass replacement that's free or not?
Yes, yes, it is. In
Yes.
fact, I had my BJ7. I got a crack in it in New Mexico, and I happened to be at this show, and Mikhail Haggerty was there,
Yeah.
and he asked me if I knew I had this crack that was growing in the hot sun that day on the, and I said, "Yeah, come here, I'll show you something." And went around to the cockpit, and I had a Haggerty tag hanging from the keychain. I said, "I'm covered." And he said, "Yes, you are." And I said, "Can I get glass from the UK? Because this was a Moss piece of glass." And he says, "Absolutely." And they handled it with no fanfare. It was easy.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Massachusetts thing is quite good. Kathy and her daughter did a drive out to Omaha and cracked the windshield. And she called the insurance company here. They said, "Well, you're out in Omaha. Just get it replaced. We'll take care of it. No worries. Done."
But that wasn't in your Healy.
No, that was in
Right.
Forester.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So Bob Abbott, has that been your experience? And when you've had to replace glass, that the insurance companies replace it?
I've been fortunate that whenever I replaced it, the insurance company was Haggerty, and they just send the bill,
Okay.
care of it.
J.C.
There's no
Taylor and
anything like
Haggerty have both paid to replace the glass in my BJ7, and they paid me to install it.
Wow.
Oh,
Those folks at Haggerty are pretty cool.
So
How much do you charge, Bob?
So now, Mike,
I have a
here's
lot
the,
of experience here because I just did one at Mark LeBlanc's. Now I'm going to ask you, Mike, what's the condition of your seals? The seal that the glass goes in, but more importantly, the seal at the bottom of the frame that goes onto the cowl. Because
It's not
that's
in
the
terms-
hardest thing to replace on that glass.
Yeah. That's the
And if
flap
your-
that goes
if your
over
seal
the.
is good, leave it.
Yeah, I was going to chime in on that because that flap that I made when I was talking about replacing the glass on my BJ8, I bought one of those new flaps, and I made the mistake of taking out a fairly perfectly good one out of the bottom of the windshield, and getting that new one back in is just terrible, a horrible job, especially at the edges, at the ends, to try to get it to fit around that little turn there. So if that flap between the windshield and the cowl is in good shape, as Bob said, don't touch it. Just get some rubber rejuvenation
That's a
stuff.
six-pack job.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe
Yeah.
a 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was warned about that flap. The reason why I'm so reluctant about it is I have a neighbor that you guys may know, Stu Berry,
Yeah.
who is local, and he's told me, "Mike, that is a son of a gun to deal with the glass. You don't want to touch it." And he warned me about that rubber flap. He's like, that rubber flap is really, really crucial. So I have Haggerty, so I'm encouraged to hear that Haggerty might cover it. So I'm glad I was able to ask you gentlemen this, and I appreciate all the feedback. Rick, I just wanted to ask you one question. You mentioned British Car Specialist, and I Googled it, and I had British Car Specialist of Stockton. Did you say they were in Oregon? Or
No, they're in
Stockton?
Stockton, California.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
That's
you.
David Knock. Yeah. So you
So
said
Mike,
it's
here's the question. Now you have the windshield all apart. You're fixing the bodywork. How is the chrome on the windshield frame? This is the time to send it out to be re-chromed. You never want to go back here, ever. So think carefully. I know on the big
$1,000.
Healy, the BJ8, I think it breaks down to 4 pieces. Might be wrong. The sides, the top and the bottom. I don't know about the BJ. I don't know about
PJ7s
one
are the
you
same.
have. You might want to think about that because once it's apart, it's a great time to get it re-chromed. It's not that much chrome.
Does this phrase sound applicable? Mission creep?
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I'm way
Mike
past
just
that.
said he was starting to do the dog legs and he was starting to do the, because you're gonna look at that in a year and go,
Why
oh
didn't I do
shit.
that?
And
really are.
Mike, the new chrome on your windshield make your bumpers look bad, so you might want to send those out.
I'm taking
I'm
I'm
only
taking the
trying to
bumpers.
be
I'm
helpful,
taking the
Mike, you're
bumpers
always
off. I'm
helpful.
taking the bumpers
don't
off.
don't forget the vent windows too, because that chrome
Yeah.
butts right up against the windshield, so.
Yeah,
you gotta
but
send that
that's easy to do later. You don't have to worry about that yet.
Well, there's a phrase that I have in my head, no matter what I'm doing, is that it costs too much to go cheap. I don't want to do it twice.
That's true.
I could testify to that because I bought the less expensive windshield from Moss and it cracked.
Okay. Yeah, the second one's mentioned that tonight, Alden. Yeah.
What's that?
So Mike O'Neill, so you said it's a scratch.
Well,
How-
it was probably a bad. I bought the car 2006, 2007 down in Pennsylvania, and I'm sure the guys were in haste to polish it up and make it look good. And I think the grinder must have missed something, and they scraped across the windshield. So
Micro mesh is your friend. Give it a
I
try.
tried that. I tried. Is that the little the one that goes on a drill and you kind of
Well, micro mesh is a whole range of different grits, starting like at 2,400 grit all the way up to 12,000 grit, and you just polish it.
just polish.
Yeah, and sometimes a scratch. I do a lot of model building, and sometimes a scratch on clear plastic. If you put like an acrylic finish on it, it'll fill up the crack. Like even future floor polish, it'll fill up the crack, and you won't see it anymore because there's no light diffraction. That's what you're seeing as a scratch, not a crack, but a scratch is a reflection. And if you fill it up and make it smooth, you won't see it anymore.
Yeah, I took it into what's that process? They're advertised all the time where they do
Safe glass.
safe glass. Yeah, they laughed at me.
Yeah, on 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, hotel TV. Yeah. Operator standing by.
Yeah, I was hopeful that would be the solution, but it wasn't. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback, gentlemen. It's really good to be part of the group and hear so much knowledge from you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. So
It's not a zero-sum option. We're in this together.
Are there other questions tonight? We got a good group. We got over 30 on the call tonight. Any other questions?
I have one, please. I'm sort of bringing my cars. I've got two sports cars. Ugh. I've got a Triumph Spitfire and a Healey, and I replaced the oil and filter on the Spitfire, and a couple of us just did the replace all the brake fluid and clutch fluid on that, and we're going to do the same thing on the Healey. I also want to replace the gearbox oil and the differential oil on both cars. From what I understand, the differential oil on both cars plus the gearbox oil on the Spitfire are the same. For the Healey, it's I think you recommend 30 weight straight mineral. For the differential, there's hypoid and there's a whole bunch of different ones, but I think I mentioned at the text session, somebody mentioned a red line that and I've been told that you should avoid the semi slip or something like. What oil would you use on differentials for the Healey Spitfire? And it's the same oil on the gear shift on the Spitfire.
Again, we're not discussing Spitfires on these calls, so let's focus on the Healeys.
Yeah, but it's the same oil. Yeah. Yes. So on the back end of the Healey, on the differential on the Healey, it's all the same. So I just want to get a good one. What would you recommend for the differential on the Healey?
Healy differentials are really, really tough. You can put an EP90, it'll last you forever.
Okay. So like there's a red line is one
Don't
that's
even
mentioned.
don't even go flash. Just any good EP90 will be fine.
Okay.
Walmart.
Walmart.
What about the transmission? Is red line not good for the transmission? Or is it okay?
On the Spitfire or the
Transmission, you
Healy?
have-
No,
This is a
Healy.
BJ8, a BJ8.
Engine oil.
Like the 30 weight straight mineral is one thing that's
Now,
been
people
mentioned.
go on and on about using straight 30 weight oil in the gearboxes on Healys, but I've used 2050 for years with no problems whatsoever.
And
Really?
Is that in the transmission?
In the gearbox, correct.
Yeah.
Never had
When
an
I
issue
had
at all.
my gearbox rebuilt by Quantum Mechanics, they do the transmissions there in Connecticut. He told me straight weight, non-detergent, 30 weight, and you could buy it at Napa. It's just non-detergent, 30 weight.
Yeah.
And I've used that for the last couple of years. It seems fine.
Okay.
That's what he recommends. But I'm going to take a step back. Mike, I'm going to tell you one thing to buy. When you buy the oil, it's really hard to take that big can, a big bottle you get, and try to get it in the rear axle. When you go to Advanced Auto Parts or any of those auto parts, they sell a little kit. It's a pump and a hose. It's like a press down pump, and you screw it into the top of the 90 weight gear oil, and you press it down, and the oil just flows right out into the through the tube into the rear axle.
What
Same thing for the BJ8 transmission. Don't try to do funnels. Just buy this little thing. It costs like $8,
Yep.
and you'll at the next meeting you'll swear by it. It made it all so much easier.
I was going to get one of these sort of like almost a suction syringe, which I guess you could use to pull the oil out or push it in.
This thing, just go look at it. They sell it right by where the oil is. It's just screws into the top
Yep.
of the thing, and it just has a pump like a shampoo pump, a little hose, fills it up. Made it so much simpler.
I agree with Steve. They work great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is on the differential fluid, they're also now selling those in pouches. So you don't have a hard plastic. You got a pouch now. And so you can squeeze it much easier that way than, but you know, what Steve mentions that pump that screws right on the top of the oil bottle, you know, won't go in a can. It's gonna in a bottle, in a plastic bottle works great.
Okay. All right.
I just like to get it flowing down my arm into my armpit.
You know, it's that's the kind of little tool that you use once every 3 years, but you're happy to have it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, it's got lots of uses, so that's good.
Okay.
Other questions
Thank
this evening? David, Francis?
New BN4 owner, finally putting my car to bed for another 2 months at any rate. The weather's been pretty cooperative, but just topping off the gas tank, and the prior owner said he used high test with lead additive. My AI program says you don't need to add lead because it's at any rate. I was wondering what has everybody used 91 or 93 octane? This is in a 106, 106, and do you use a lead additive?
Do I have to do my lecture again?
well, David's new, so let's be gentle, Michael.
Okay. Your car does not need high octane. It's a low compression engine.
Right.
Yep. Lead additive is not required in big Healy engines. The engine doesn't the valves don't get hot enough for the valves to weld to the seats and cause valve seat recession. So the cheapest gas you can find will work just great.
Okay.
Are you saying that
about-
for a BJ8 too, or are you
Same,
saying?
same deal. They're low compression engines. They're not super race engines, and
Well,
low compression engines don't need octane is only for high compression.
So
Okay,
Michael, you're
the-
saying an 87 octane would work?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
if you're getting a lot of dieseling at the end of when you shut it down, is that any indication?
That's
Not
your
nec-
timing.
Not necessarily.
Is that
dieseling will
timing?
happen? Dieseling will happen with high octane as well. It's a function of the buildup of carbon in the combustion chambers. The trick for that is turn the engine off when you're in top gear and slowly let the clutch out.
Well, yes, except I get less dieseling or no dieseling with high octane and some with low octane.
Now I can't explain that, but you certainly don't need high octane for the engine to get best performance.
Michael, what
Well,
about?
that'd be nice because I'd like not to use high octane.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no kidding.
What about ZDDP additive to the oil? Do you do anything like that or no?
Yeah, that's a tough one. ZDDP, that's to gasoline, not oil. That's gasoline. It's a zinc additive.
No, for oil.
No, it's
Sorry,
oil.
no, I'm
That's
thinking.
oil.
I'm sorry. I'm two tracks here. For oil, the difficulty is that these engines require ZDDP for the flat tappets. My personal experience has been that they need it for the initial break-in. I think after the initial break-in, regular engine oils, which still have a little bit of ZDDP, is sufficient. It's high ZDDP, in my experience, is required for the initial break-in to. What it actually does is it coats the lifters and the cam and gives them a lubricating surface. So, yeah, I use break-in oil for new engines. Then once the engine's broken in, regular oil seems to be just fine.
Okay.
I bought a year or so ago Castrol high mileage oil right at the Advanced Auto or one of those places, and it said it had additional ZDP or whatever it is, lead added to it for the high mileage cars. So look that up. I had a picture of it. I put it in our Austin-Healey Sports and Touring magazine, The Flash, a couple of years ago. But if you're in looking at oil, look for Castrol, high mileage. I either bought it at Advanced Auto or Walmart, and it was filled with, so I didn't have to add that little container of that what Mike was talking about.
I had quite an experience with Valvoline VR1, and if I was going to use a high ZDDP oil, I would use Valvoline VR1. It has served me extremely well, but
Okay.
I'm not sure how necessary it is on a broken-in engine.
I just ordered some Castrol GTX high zinc oil. What was nice is that normally oil is about $7 or $8 a quart. I got it in a 5-quart container for Amazon, like $24 at my door for 5-quart containers, and and that's that seemed economical, and it's here and doesn't go off.
Yeah.
So Mike O'Neill, I also use Valvoline VR120.
I like it. It seems to
ZDD.
work for me. I can't say it's the best oil in the world, but it works for me.
I've used the Castrol high mileage. I was just asking about the ZDDP because we were talking about additives, and I was just curious to see, if that was a consideration, because I happen to put high octane in my car as well. And, sometimes you read too much into this stuff. People tell you, oh, well, the unleaded fuel, you need to do that. So,
Look back about 40 years to what the Surgeon General said about vitamins.
And when these cars are built, was a high octane oil fuel available?
Yeah.
Now, what about non-ethanol?
Non-ethanol. fuel is actually becoming a big problem for our cars. The fuel injected cars, you can use a fuel which has a much lower boiling point than what will work on a carbureted car. And of course, they don't make any carbureted cars anymore. So you can put fuel in a fuel injected engine, which will boil at, say, 70 degrees C. But you put that into a carbureted car, it boils in the float chambers. So you can't use that fuel in float chambers. We are dinosaurs, and fuel is going to become more and more of a problem for us.
Mike, is that why cars seem to get a little bit more vapor lock now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're using things like toluene and things like that in fuel. They're adding it to the fuel because it works absolutely fine at the high pressure of fuel injection engines, but it doesn't work in carbureted engines.
It's funny because in my Bugeye, going back to what Mike was asking, my Bugeye seemed to get vapor lock, and I had to put all kinds of insulation on the fire, kind of the little protector between the motor and the carburetors.
The heat
and
plate,
Larry
heat
Gerson's
shield.
cars, that's happening more and more now, especially if you're using just the manual fuel pump that doesn't have enough pressure.
Well, the
Electric fuel pump might be able to override that. But I had vapor lock, it was just ridiculous.
Fuel pump pressure won't make any difference because the fuel in the float chambers is at atmospheric pressure, just like a toilet tank. And the hotter the float chamber is, the more the fuel tends to boil. So if you put stuff like toluene, which is particularly nasty, put toluene in fuel, which they do these days, toluene boils at about the temperatures that our float chambers get out. So that's why the engines won't start after you stop at a gas station. So it's really hard. You've got to somehow figure out a way to cool the float chambers to stop the fuel from boiling in the float chambers. It's a very difficult problem, and we're going to suffer for this more and more as time goes by.
If you're actually driving, you've got plenty of airflow, so it's really not a problem. It's more of a problem when starting after stopping for a cup of coffee.
I'm building a fuel injected BN2 for
Wow.
this very reason.
Up here we can get a fuel with non-ethanol fuel fairly regularly. Is that recommended?
Well, difficulty is it may not have ethanol in it, but I'll bet it still has toluene in it. Toluene is the one that's causing the most problems, apparently.
Yeah,
And
I don't seem to
toluene
have a
boils.
problem with that at all. My car starts fine,
Yeah.
but I've been using high octane because that's what I was told was to use in that car. But to get rid of the knock, not the knock, but the dieseling.
Octane was developed to accommodate high compression engines.
Right.
But our engines are low compression engines. It's
the knocking that's the issue, right?
Well,
because a high compression engine will knock with low octane fuel.
That's correct, but you don't have a high compression engine.
Okay. What do you call high compression? What reading?
Over 11 to 1.
Over 11 to 1?
Stuff you're seeing on the road these days, 11 and 12 to 1, they're high.
Yeah, what does a Healy BJ8 have?
That's 9.1 or something, or
9.4, I think it is.
9.4. It's quite low. BN2s and BN1s are like 7.9 or something. They're really low.
Yeah, about 8. Yeah.
On a compression test, what kind of reading do you get on a 9 to 1 as opposed to 11 to 1?
You can't use the PSI reading on a compression gauge to determine the compression ratio. You have to actually calculate it.
Oh, okay. Okay,
great.
So
other questions tonight?
Yeah, so in a choice between 90 octane non-ethanol or 93 octane ethanol with ethanol,
I'd take the non-ethanol.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I do notice that my Healy as well seems to diesel a bit if I have a lower octane gas.
Yeah, but dieseling is different from pinking, as they call it.
Right, pinging, yeah.
Pinking is a different thing. Pinking is when you're going up a hill at 1200 RPM and you put your foot flat down. That's pinking, and that's what octane saves you.
Yeah.
Will that pinging damage the engine, or is it just annoying?
Not really.
Okay.
But you got to do it for a long, long time to damage the engine.
Okay.
Well, as timing has something to do with pinging too, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. If
Mm.
you advance the timing too far, you get the same effect as a high compression engine on low octane fuel.
Yeah.
Do the timing to what the factory said it.
Yeah, because they've made thousands of them. Believe them.
They made a lot of them. Yeah,
That's
they're not quite good at it.
So Chris, where do you live that you can get non-ethanol fuel?
I'm up near Portland, Maine.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it quite easily up here in northern Vermont.
Okay.
We got a lot of boats on Lake Champlain, and they
Well,
like
yeah,
to
you
use
can get
non-ethanol.
a lot of marinas have it.
I also at small airports you can get it.
Yeah,
True,
I
too.
get it.
like-
I get aviation fuel at small airports.
Yeah.
yeah, and at Hampton, for example, they have aviation fuel, and the next pump over is 91 octane, no no alcohol.
Ethanol.
But no, because on my Pacer, I need 91 octane with aircraft engines. They prefer non-ethanol.
I can get it both leaded or unleaded aviation fuel, straight out of a pump.
It's low lead. The hunt says 100 low lead.
Yeah.
So and the octane, some of the aviation fuel went up to 115, 145 octane, the purple stuff, which you can't really get anymore. But that's for the the right turbo compound engines, the 4360s and stuff.
Somewhat expensive.
A point of reference, down in Pennsylvania, we now can buy non-ethanol regular gas at Wawa stores.
No
And
kidding.
they're tearing up all of the pumps in the Wawas and installing the non-ethanol regular gas. So you can,
Wow.
all the new Wawas down here and a lot of the old ones, they're tearing up the tanks and putting new in. So it's
Really?
becoming available, and it seems to be selling pretty well.
Now, is that just because of the demand of classic cars, Ken?
I doubt it. I don't know what the reason is, but since Wawa as a group has been changing these stores over, that's going to
Wow.
be an expensive change. So it's got to be worthwhile for some reason.
Wow.
But
Okay.
we all of the cars that we get in, if they're going to be there for any length of time, we go to non-ethanol fuel, so we don't have to worry about the phase separation.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Okay.
So, Michael,
Ken,
you're
is
saying
it less expensive, the non-ethanol?
It's more
Average,
expensive.
the average is about $4 a gallon.
Oh, so it's more expensive.
Yeah, it's more expensive.
yeah.
Well, a lot of that is because how much are they selling? And my thought is that we're enjoying these cars anyhow, so they've spent a little bit more on gas, whatever.
Yeah, high octane won't hurt an engine.
Okay.
Right.
No, but the ethanol will.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dave Francis, did you have another question?
No, I was just saying, Michael, you're saying that really it doesn't matter what the octane rating is. You can go 87 or 91.
That's correct.
And you don't have to worry about any additives.
Not in my experience, that it doesn't make any difference. The valves don't you don't get valve recession in big Healey engines. Doesn't happen.
Interesting.
It does in motor mowers.
Okay. Other questions?
Pete, if I can bring up an altogether new subject, and sorry I didn't get to you before, but rear axle seals on a BT7. I've replaced mine on one side twice and the other side once, and it may be operator error, but after a year or two, they leak again. And I see that the axle seals, I've got them from Moss and AH Spares, and they happen to be the same seal. They're like $3 to $3. There are some people that sell a premium seal. Moss does, Auto Farm does. And I'm wondering if anyone has some insights on the seals. Again, it may be operator error in putting them together. I've had some, I think, some knowledgeable help in doing it, but anything on rear axle seals on a BT7 that people can share, I'd appreciate.
First thing to check is that the vent in the differential is open. There's a vent on the top of the differential. If it gets blocked or damaged, you get pressure build up in the differential and it blows the oil out through the seals.
So Bob, Steve Fell just mentioned about Auto Farm. Is there a special seal that you're using on the rear axles?
Nothing special. We do always check the breather on the axle loader, make sure that it's open.
Yeah.
We have corrected a couple of rear axles that were resealed by their owners, and they put the seal in the wrong way around.
Yeah, seal's going to be facing the right direction. That helps.
Yeah.
Now, do you put, Bob, do you put any sealant on the gasket that you put in? Do you put like Indian shellac or anything? Because Steve Feld, you're talking about that little tan paper gasket.
Paper gasket.
No, you're talking about the rubber seal, Steve.
You're talking about the rubber seal. Yeah.
Yeah. You're
There's
talking
a
about
paper
the
gasket that
rubber seal,
some
not the
people
little-
say.
Yeah.
There's a paper gasket that some people say coat with, say, Halimar or something, thin coating. But I guess I'm thinking more of the seal itself. But any other insights on the rear axle, I'd appreciate.
Steve, I think the vent is a good suggestion.
They had problems with the competition cars, and that's when they developed the O-ring on that gasket. So you pull some of them, you pull the later cars apart, and they have both a gasket and O-ring. And that's because they found in the competition cars that the differential, the axle flange was distorting under high load and allowing leakage. But you're probably not driving under those conditions.
No.
Just further on Steve's question, I mean, we noticed, Steve and I were talking just yesterday, we noticed that, is it Moss, Steve, or someone else who's selling a much more expensive rear seal? And, this phenomenon is happening more and more with some of the parts that Moss offers. They have the premium one and they have the cheap one. Is there anyone have any experience with these? I think they're like $50, aren't they, Steve?
$30 each.
30 bucks each as opposed to $3 each. Yeah. And you wonder what's the difference. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Refer back to my comment on vitamins.
The difference is $27.
Yeah. Okay.
Steve, I have a question. Is that the rubber O-ring that you're talking about that went up, or is it the paper gasket?
It's neat. There's a different seal that goes right up against the bearing.
It's the lip seal.
Yeah. It's the rubber lip seal.
Yeah. There's an O-ring as well, and there's a paper gasket, and then there's a seal that goes against the bearing.
Yeah.
You're about the seal against the bearing then.
We're talking about the rubber seal against the bearing, yeah.
Yes.
The one that can go in backwards or forwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else have any thoughts for Steve regarding that?
A question: how do I make sure the breather is open? I can turn it to loosen it, but if it's clogged, I guess that may not do it. Just unscrew it all the way and make sure it's open.
That's right. The early ones actually were made of brass or steel. The later ones are made of nylon. But just unscrew it from the differential completely and wash it out. Make sure it's clean. Put it back on. So make sure you can blow through it after you wash the vase. After you wash the vasole off.
Does it have a small breather hole in the middle of the?
Yeah, it has a little cap on it. Breathes around the cap.
Yeah. There's no one-way check valve or anything in that?
No, just open.
Okay. It's like a little stone a filter, isn't it? It's not a paper filter. It's like a little,
I don't think there's a filter in it. There's a little.
Essentially,
it's not a filter, but it's a little cap, and under the cap, I thought it was like what's on the brake booster. It's like a little stone air filter. I'd have to go look on the Moss catalog, but
Yeah,
you're
don't
right. It's
recall.
not a filter as we see, but it's something to keep the dirt out.
Yeah. Just, it's not a very big orifice, that's for sure.
No.
It doesn't need much.
Now, here's a question. Can the half shafts be reversed?
Not on a big Healy.
The half shafts are all the same, left and right. There's no difference.
Yeah.
So I always
They're the
thought
same on sprites too, aren't they, Michael? I mean, they're different.
The same
but-
on all our cars except AHX12, which one side's got a short one.
Oh, does it?
Well, the reason I asked is, and this might just be totally wrong. I always heard that the half shaft almost had like a rifling in it that would, as it was spinning, would push the oil back toward the center, the pumpkin of the rear axle. Not that it would be pushing it out toward the hub. That rifling, because it's almost encased in oil, not totally cased in oil, would be pushing it back or flipping it back.
Well, if that's the case, they'd have different part numbers and they don't.
Okay, then that's totally wrong. Okay.
The one
But
thing you
then the
don't
other
want to do,
question is,
however, is with a used one, is swap them on different sides because they take a set. If they've been going in one direction for their whole life, and then if you swap the other side, they go backwards, and leave me with sprites, they can break all the time that way.
Right. So then the only other question I have about the rear, if Steve's rear keeps, the gasket keeps going, Steve, you did replace the outer bearing, correct?
Yes, we did that as a tech session a couple of years ago. Both
Right.
bearings on both sides,
So
yeah.
if the outer bearing is correct and the seal keeps letting oil through, could the inner bearing at the pumpkin be worn and letting the half shaft move a little bit, letting the oil out?
Wouldn't be enough movement.
Okay.
At that distance, you would get maybe 1/10 of a degree. It would be nothing.
So that isn't it. All right.
And Steve, I'm focusing on that seal, but I'm not exactly sure where it's leaking, whether it's the O-ring, the paper gasket, or that seal. I'm thinking the seal's the most likely, but it could be one of the others too. So,
But if you did a good job sealing the paper gasket,
I'm the youngest guy on here. What a surprise.
if the oil did get to the other side of the
This club's
bearing,
gonna die I'm gonna be like the last remaining member.
the oil shouldn't leak out if that paper seal is sealed correctly.
Yeah, the one trick that we did find on a couple of cars is the flange of the hub. That's not the axle, but the hub was distorted. So we took the studs out of it, faced it off on a surface plate, and put it back on. And when we did that, we found there was quite a high spot at each of the studs. So there was a little distortion between the studs. I have no idea what caused that. Somebody maybe over torqued them or something. I don't know. But that has solved it for us on one occasion, or two occasions actually.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yep. Mike Sattler, if I may ask, do you have a do you do this professionally? I'm new to the club, so I don't know everybody yet.
I've been retired for 20 years. I love it.
Okay.
But I still do it as a hobby a lot.
Well, what part of the state do you live in?
I'm in Ontario, Toronto, north of Ontario.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay,
a
so
long way away. Big drive.
Yeah,
drive.
no, I know the area well. Now, what part of the UK are you from?
I know I'm not.
Don't insult them like that,
Well,
Mike. You're in trouble.
He's Yanks.
Well,
I'm from New Zealand.
Wait a minute. I'm Canadian.
Oh, well, you still said you Yanks. I'm from New Zealand, not Australia or Britain.
Sorry. No, because I have I've all things British have a tiger moth also.
Oh, do you? Gypsy
So
Major.
so you know what that is.
I did my trade tests on Gypsy Majors.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mine essentially is 0 timed, 1C. Great engines. I hope.
Yeah, you hope.
Well, that's good. Any other questions tonight?
Quick unrelated question. Going to Amsterdam this spring, is the Healey Museum worth going to?
Definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They're the
Well worth the
loveliest.
trip.
They're the loveliest people. They are so nice.
Yeah. And Amsterdam's wonderful too.
Now, Jack, you just need to watch out in terms of they're open, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, okay.
So
No,
you check on their website. They're not open 7 days a week.
Yeah, no, I've checked on their website, but I just didn't know whether anyone else had been there and whether it's worth going to see. Okay, thank you.
Friends of ours went, and they could only make the museum on the day they were closed. They phoned to find out when they were open and found out that they were closed the day they could make it. And the museum proprietors said, "You come anyway, and we'll open it up for you."
Good.
Wow.
That's nice to know.
Yeah.
So they're good people.
They gave them they were the only people there, but they still opened it for them.
Nice.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Let me just share my screen. So just give you a couple things that are upcoming. Our annual general meeting is on Saturday, the 20th. It is via Zoom. There's the link for it. And then we also have Mark LeBlanc is having a Cars and Coffee at British Body and Coach Works up in New Hampshire on the 27th. So those are a couple of things that are coming up during the month of January. Then in February, we're going to have a valve cover races on February 10th, assuming weather permitted, and we won't have another snowstorm. The Roy Crane is organizing that for us. We'll be using our 20-foot track in my shop. So we're going to have both 4-cylinders and 6-cylinder classes available for that. We do have the valve cover, the guidelines and the instructions for the valve covers are there. You can download the rules for that. So any BMC valve cover is fine. And so those are some of the things we got coming up in the not too distant future. Bruce Ketchum, anything else you want to add?
Just got to get off mute, Peter. Sorry. We're looking forward to your valve cover race. I think that should be a good time. I talked to Ernie Connor about it recently, and the timing devices are recently updated and ready to go. And I'm just going to put Carl J on the spot. He bought a valve cover, and I want to know whether you put some wheels on it yet.
Not yet.
All right.
Oh, the pressure's on, Carl, huh?
Tempest Fugit here. So let's get going. We want to see some real competition at the event. So that's hey, it was just one shout out. I don't know whether this is appropriate or not, but I recently had to replace a floor panel. I haven't done it yet, but I had to get some floor panels for my Bugeye Sprite project and shopped around. Ended up buying them from Bob Ewell, and I just want to say thanks, Bob, for having the product on hand. It was shipped to me in Massachusetts. It came in perfect shape, and I thought the pricing for both the product and the shipping were quite reasonable. So take an opportunity to publicly say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Glad we could help you.
That's it, Peter, for me.
Okay, great. Well, thank
Pete,
you all for joining. Please,
Pete, if I can also put an ad in for
Steve.
The display at the Antique Automobile Club of America Museum in Hershey. If you're driving through Pennsylvania anytime this until the middle of April, there's a separate display of Austin-Healey's, a Bugeye, a square body, a 100, and a BJ8, actually Steve's BJ8, in its own gallery with memorabilia and a lot of history. So if you're driving through Pennsylvania, stop at the museum at the Antique Automobile Club of America. It's a great display, and it's well worth stopping.
Great, thanks. Hey, Steve, if you want to send me that, I'll put it out on our website if you'd like. I can send out an email blast.
Yeah, you had sent an email out to all the members about it, so you should have it.
Okay, let me check again.
I'll send it to you again. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Steve. You're right. That was a month or so ago. You're right.
Mhm.
But that was last year, Steve. We're in 2024 now. So.
Okay,
Well,
so
good.
here's the real question. As Steve Feld said, my car is in that museum. No battery tender, in a nice warm museum for 3.5 months. What are we going to bet whether it's going to start or not?
It'll start.
You think?
How strong? How old's your battery?
Brand new. Battery's
Yeah.
brand new.
It'll start.
Hopefully they required you disconnect one of the battery cables.
Now, we turn the switch off.
Turn the switch off. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Now,
problem.
how about tires?
You know how
flat
reliable
spots?
those switches are.
Yeah.
Right, now I'm worried about flat spotting the tires. What would that be all about?
Drive them.
Get some tire cradles.
You know, now it's in there. It's none of the cars have tire cradles in there. Remember, this museum has maybe 300-400 cars and motorcycles.
Flat body will last
After the
about
first
5
25
minutes.
seconds driving, it'll be fine.
Yep.
Whatever.
So we'll see
Steve,
what
when I'm there
happens.
in-
I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
I'm
When I'm there in
actually
February,
in Florida and went to Mecum auction this week, and I'm going back with Steve Feld this weekend when they have the high ticket cars. I don't know if any of you guys are in Florida or plan to come, but Mecum had 4,500 cars that they sold in the past 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, the two Healeys 100s, both of them went in the mid 40s. Very disappointing.
Wow.
And then wasn't there a
one had 100
BJ8?
Lamar, but still was a.
Well, it wasn't disappointing for the buyers.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
It wasn't, and I looked at some of the cars. There was one that didn't go for 40, a black one, on the day that we were there. It should have gone. I mean, I was talking to the guy. He should have taken the money and run. But there is one Kurt Tanner, the golden beige with the kind of red maroonish interior that is, I think they said it's back for the 3rd time being sold. I think that comes later in the week. And what is it, Steve? The Nash Healey is going on Friday?
I think Friday, yeah, there's a red
There's a
Nash Healey.
gorgeous Nash Healey going off on Friday. I looked at it. It's funny when you go to these auctions, you really can't, drive them or do anything. You can just kind of stare at them, look underneath. So you really don't know much about it, but it's still an amazing show.
Yeah.
It's on Motor Trend TV, and you could watch, and it's just phenomenal. One guy is selling his collection of 1963 split window Corvettes. 20 of them, one of every color made that year.
Wow.
I mean, who even knew? And right beside that display was a guy selling about 18 of his Superbirds, the ones with the big wing.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of, I don't know, 40 million dollars right there. It was just amazing to see. Yeah, a lot of money. So,
So
more money.
Well,
than
thank you
sense.
guys. Hope everyone's doing well and survived the recent storm. And we'll see you guys the second week in second week of February on that Monday evening. So Have a good
Very good,
evening.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you all.
Thank you,
Pete.
thank you very much,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks,
Good
Peter.
night.
Peter.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.